I'm John Hanna for CDTV.net in New York, and we have Mr. Corey Harowitz, the Chairman and CEO of Network One. Thanks for joining us, sir.
It's nice to be here, John.
And the office is based out of here in Midtown, right? So
yes, we're uptown. We're uptown, Midtown Manhattan. I came down here to see you today.
Thank you, sir. Now, tell us about Network One again.
Network One is involved in the acquisition and investing in of intellectual property assets for the purpose of licensing those intellectual property assets to third parties.
When you say acquisition and intellectual properties, can you explain that in layman's term?
Well, intellectual property assets mean, for the most part, patents. These are patents. These are patents covering patented technology, inventive technologies owned by companies, owned by inventors, who desire to have royalties or licensing royalties paid for the use of those inventions. And sometimes it requires having to license those, and in some cases having to enforce that intellectual property against people who are using the technologies.
So how do you find these properties?
We're approached all the time with very interesting intellectual property assets owned by companies and third parties.
So how does it work? Like, do they look up at Yellow Pages or how?
It's a relatively small market of people who invest in and acquire or license intellectual property, so people know who we are.
Okay, so let's say you have company A, a big company A, and then you have a small company B, and they wanted to protect themselves. Now, if somebody comes up, company A comes up and say, you know what, we'll just buy you out. Is it better to sell out or talk to a guy like you to protect the patent?
Well, I think like anything else, it comes down to a question of value, as to how they create the most value for themselves. Companies typically are in the marketplace buying intellectual property assets that they feel they need, because they fear maybe if they're not acquiring it, they may be infringing those patents. It's a relatively large marketplace in terms of the number of transactions, but it's basically performed by a small number of companies that are always buying and selling IP. And now investors are making the same investments for the purpose of monetizing or licensing the patents to companies or other people who require licenses to those patents.
Okay, since you brought up investors, okay, so I'm an investor, let's say, for example, I have money and I want to buy into your company. So where do I see profit from your company?
Well, again, we have a business that focuses on licensing the intellectual property. And to the extent that we can license it without having to fight over it, that's great. These royalties are very high margin revenues. There are no cost of goods associated with it. But to the extent that sometimes you have to fight to get companies to pay you what you deserve, we'll do that. Not very many people have the stomach, the wherewithal, the financial resources it requires to go out and fight that fight. And increasingly, companies want you to fight them because they don't want to pay royalties when they don't have to, and they want you to prove your case.
Okay. So what is the most time that you've spent fighting a fight for intellectual property? Well,
beginning in 2005 or 2004, actually, we acquired a portfolio that required enforcement. That means we had to go out and fight to get the companies to pay us, and we spent 6 years doing that. We had several litigations, and we successfully completed a litigation last summer. We settled one of our big cases against 6 or 7 different data networking companies related to a patent that we own covering a technology referred to as Power over Ethernet, and we're going to continue to license that portfolio, that patent actually. So we spent a long time, a lot of money, but we did very well. We have royalties coming in now to the company, and actually, the settlement that we reached and the licenses that we have probably add up to more than the company's value in the marketplace.
Oh, nice. And this royalties, is this going to be a yearly royalty? Or?
We have annual royalties from several licensees. We also have annual royalties from a large company called Cisco Systems that will begin in 2011. And
this year?
This year. And some of the other royalties are fully paid. We already received the money. So it's a mixture of both.
Now, where do you see the future of your company from here on?
Well, again, we will continue to license the Power over Ethernet portfolio patent. There are several hundred companies in our database that today sell product relating to Power over Ethernet, so we will approach them and offer licenses to the technology, and if necessary, we'll have to fight that fight as well. We're also looking at several other opportunities, large opportunities relating to technologies that's owned by partners, companies, inventors that we think may be interesting opportunities to license. And if we do those transactions, there'll be hopefully revenues associated with those efforts.
Are you just focusing on technology, intellectual patents?
Most of the intellectual property that we look at relates to different types of technology, whether it be networking or wireless, smartphones, chipsets, all related to technology. Yes.
Okay, so going back to my question earlier, if I need to do a research about your company, I will just go online, go to your website, and do some analysis of the current portfolio that you guys have. Are all of your portfolios online, or?
We have one portfolio, and we have our press releases are pretty complete about the licenses that we have and our royalties that we generate from that portfolio. It's unclear what the royalties will be going forward, obviously, until we see them. And then you could also go online and learn more by searching for patents and patent litigation and patent enforcement. You'll learn about the industry. It's a very fast-growing industry. A lot more financial-type players like ourselves are investing in intellectual property assets. Almost every day you hear about patent litigation between large companies. So it's a growing industry, and as a result, we think it's an attractive industry for Network One.
So what is the difference between you and, say, IBM? IBM puts out about 1,000 patents a year, and you guys would be...
Well, the only difference between us and a company that licenses its technology, so IBM licenses patents that they own, some of which are related to the businesses they're in, and some of which are related to businesses that they're not in. But they are actually out licensing those technologies. They believe that if they have inventions that are covered by patents that people require licenses to use, they should be out licensing. So a lot of companies license as well. The difference is that we don't have a product portfolio. We're not engaged in manufacturing a product or offering a solution. We are purely interested in licensing technology. So while we do the same thing a little bit, we don't have a business of product development or product sales. We focus purely on licensing intellectual property.
And are you buying or selling your own stock within the next 12 months?
I have no plans on buying or selling stock. I have a lot of stock in the company. We have a large group of shareholders that own a large percentage of the stock. We're interested in growing value of the company. We think we can grow it substantially.
Where do you see yourself in 2 years, 3 and 5 years?
Well, I think hopefully we will continue to license the Power over Ethernet portfolio. And I see over the course of the next several years continuing to get royalties from that, which should be growing royalties because the business is a growing business, as well as having several other portfolios that are being licensed. So we'll have royalty streams coming from several different technologies that we're licensing. And these are high margin royalties because there's no cost of goods associated with it. We don't have a high overhead. We don't have a big staff. We don't have multiple offices. So as a result, a lot of the revenues that we get will become profitable revenues and will flow to the bottom line for the benefit of our shareholders.
Any other things you might want to add?
I just think that it's an interesting time in the intellectual property space. There are a lot of patents that were issued between 1995 and 2001 when the technology boom was here. All these companies were developing technologies, and these patents are out there. There are a lot of companies that ended up surviving the product business, so they're out there, in some cases, using those technologies without paying for it. So I think the inventors of those patents, as well as the companies that own them, deserve to get paid for the inventions that they made. And so we're here to help those companies, and we're here to license those. And if it requires having to fight for it, we're willing to do that. We've shown that we're willing to do it. We feel like we're always in the right position. We're at the right side of the argument. We wouldn't do it if we didn't think that these patents were valid and infringed and require licenses. So, we think it's an interesting time to be in our stock.
That's Corey Harowitz, the chairman and CEO of Network One, joining us here at our Wall Street office downtown I'm John Hanna for cdtv.net in New York. Thank you.
Thank you.